Well, uh, that people, the statistics say that people that use Facebook, many people that are heavy users of Facebook, update and check their status and look at their Facebook feeds 50 times a day. Every day in America, the statistics say 11 people, usually teenagers, die daily texting and driving. 11 every day.
Mm-hmm.
And 28 die every day from alcohol related automobile accidents. And most of those are usually younger people. You know, if we're really caring about people's lives, then shouldn't we care about those 11 that social media, because texting is a form of social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's a use of technology as a social media platform, texting, tweeting, Facebook. And if you have 11 people a day that are dying from that, that's 77 people a week. That's 385 people a year. That are, that's 350 to 400 people a year that are literally being taken out of this life.
Not to mention all the ones through drug abuse.
Not to mention the ancillary effects of grief that happen to families, and how families are forever changed by those things. The creators of Facebook and the creators of a lot of these social media platforms, Instagram and these different ones, Twitter and
Instagram, Snapchat.
Snapchat, that's the one I was trying to think of. All of these, and it's not that the technology is demonic. It's that I think that it was not clear all of the ramifications of how it was going to be used when it started. And I think that there are some things that are in place now. And the Bible had a very clear precedent about that. The Bible said that you should remove your foot from your neighbor's home lest he become weary of thee. And I know people say, well, there you go, quoting that old Bible again. Well, what that was actually saying was don't interact to the place where it becomes a nuisance and a source of problem and a struggle. And it becomes a point of contention. Be careful to not do that. Remove your foot from your neighbor's house lest he become weary of thee. In other words, in those days and times, it meant don't go over there to your neighbor's house and stand around there until he has to ask you to leave because you're intrusive. But yet electronically, we can do that now.
Every day, and we invite it.
We engage in that process of putting our foot in our neighbor's house. Electronically, constantly, every day.
Self-centeredness in a lot of ways.
And the truth of the matter is, at the end of that process, or at the basis of that process, the idea is still the same. Whether it be your physical foot or whether it be your electronic footprint, there's just only so much of sharing of each other's intimate personal lives that people need. The automobile did the same thing. The automobile at the turn of the 20th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, did the same thing. I guess at the beginning of the 20th century. Automobiles started being prevalent in the 1910s. And what happened then is you could get in your car and you could drive somewhere that you used to couldn't go except on special occasions, but you could jump in that car and drive somewhere 50 miles away and go see somebody or see something. It revolutionized the way that society changed and interacted, and there were all sorts of unintended consequences that came along with that, like the cost of automobiles, the danger of automobiles, and just all sorts of unintended or unforeseen consequences of those things that came along. I say that in the information age that we're living in, the technological age we're living in, we should be very careful about embracing social medias that have a tendency to bring us in contact too much and have consequences that we don't fully recognize yet. The creators of all of these social media platforms will tell you many of them have come out, people that were integral in making those things work. They will tell you that we realize now that what we created has changed and altered the very fabric of society in ways that we didn't foresee and anticipate, and that we're not particularly sure how it's going to all eventually play out. And even sometimes we look at it regrettably and say, maybe we should have been a little bit more prudent. Mm-hmm. You can find articles all over the internet, YouTube, all over the internet, of people that were part of they were the cutting edge of developing of these things, and they're saying now, I'm not so sure that this was all just sweetness and light, that maybe this wasn't all just beautiful, and perfect, Is it cool? Yeah, but it's just so easy to slip into things that are just unwholesome and unhealthy for us. Yeah. It's not important. It's not important that everybody know what I ate for breakfast. Yeah. It's not important. It's not an important thing that people know where I stopped for coffee on the way to work or had lunch. And what happens with technology and social media is we blur the lines of distinction between what's really important and what's not, and what's necessary to know and what's not. And when you get so much information out there, then the really truly important things lose their value because they're lost in a sea of trivial things that don't necessarily need to be known.
I heard a little piece of an article that was talking about that. It said that every time somebody's on a social media platform, you take a picture of something you've seen at a gas station, you post it on there, and you're taking a selfie with it. Even though life's terrible behind the scenes of all those things, what they're doing that for is for that thumbs up or that like button or that share or that comment, and it triggers a dopamine release in their mind, saying that somebody approves even of something as trivial as that, and it self-centers them to a place. And the point being that to harken back to a man that you and I both hold in high regard, that he was talking about it, saying that what this does is it makes people unable to deal with real issues in their lives because they live in almost like an alternate reality of trying to pet and pamper themselves rather than dealing with real problems and learning how to deal with those things more or less, and learning how to deal with their situations in life and living in reality, right, where people don't really walk by and give you a thumbs up for something as silly as getting gas at the track store and a pat on the back and a like and a share.
Say, I like that.
Yeah, I like that. But you ate a donut stick today.
Yeah, and the getting those likes and those approvals is addictive. Mm-hmm. But the more you chase those things, and the more you get those things, and the more trivialized all that information becomes, what does those approvals really mean?
That's right.
Or, approvals.
What do they mean when you go home?
Approvals in a culture, in a society, in my estimation, true approvals, should be reserved for true accomplishments. Yeah. If somebody graduates cum laude from their university, or magna cum laude, their university, then that would be something I could give them a thumbs up over. Saying, man, that's an achievement, that's an attainment. But
or valedictorian of the high school or something.
Eating one of the new things off the dollar menu at Taco Bell is not something worthy of validation and approval. And when you lose, when everything falls into that same category of do we approve of it or not, and everybody's addicted to getting those approvals, they have a tendency to drive down the value of what they'll do to get approved. In other words, I got to get this approval, and it doesn't matter how silly or how insignificant or how trivial what I'm engaged in turns out to be. What I'm looking for is that approval. Well, what does that do to the value of things that really should be approved? Mm-hmm. It automatically drives them down.
Yeah. Sounds like the old picture of the young man who won a trophy for working hard and practicing, and his dad said, well, what did you learn today? And you see in the background all the other kids got the same trophies. And, well, I'm going to learn not to work as hard to get the trophy that everybody else gets for getting third and fourth and fifth place.
Yeah, the lesson is that you don't have to work that hard to get one of these.
I ain't gotta work too hard to do all that. I mentioned it just a second ago. Another thing that's an issue that we have that kind of goes part and parcel with some of these things is mass depression in society, and I think that the reason why it is because we've lost an ability to connect with people on a one-on-one basis. Where, especially people in my generation, we can't communicate with people. We're social introverts because we've cut ourselves off. We can text all day and say things that we wouldn't dare say in public, or we wouldn't talk to people about. We'll put it on Facebook when they'll comment and say different things, but they're unable to hold a conversation with somebody because they get all their information off of a social media website and they communicate that way, and that's the only way that they're able to do those things. And the reason why that I say that it goes hand in hand with those things, and it kind of affects people in depression more or less, is that people are looking to be happy all the time, and immediately they'll go out there instead of learning how to deal with it, because depression is a natural thing that deals in people's lives, or anxiety or different things is natural in every person's life. We've all dealt with it at some place or another. But I think that 50 years ago you didn't have as much Prozac and Xanax and all these other things, and the willingness of doctors to hand out a prescription for something like that. And the reason being is because people learned automatically, people from your generation and back learned that when you have those things in your life, you have a circle of people that are your friends, the people who are closest to you, and they're going to help you through those things, and you have an ability to communicate and work those things out rather than chasing this alternate reality and this false premise of approval for silly, trivial things, and unable to work them out.
I think that, for generations, Devin, people that were looking in search of significance, and they wanted something to satisfy their lives. And here again, this is not a slam of technology, because you could use technology to do this, but I don't know how many people actually do in reality. But it used to be that you turned to the great thinkers of past cultures and you examine what they had to say. How did you do that? You did that with books.
Mm-hmm.
You did that through the process of being literate and being able to go back and find out what the scholars and the artists and the philosophers and the thinkers of other generations. Give you an example. When I was growing up, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a very rural atmosphere, and the world became big to me when I discovered things like Ernest Hemingway and John Steinbeck, and authors of that caliber.
Yeah,
those kind of authors. They wrote about Americana, and I could find out things about the larger world from the platform of great thinking artists. Let me say it like this. I don't think that a 140 character tweet that you read 100 of them a day, or Facebook post that you check on 50 times a day where somebody's telling you where they just bought a new pair of sunglasses or something like that. I don't think that could compare with For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah.
Or The Sun Also Rises.
Yeah.
And classic things. And I'm not just talking about classic literature. I'm talking about the great philosophical thinkers and true intellects of days gone by. You can't get that in the fast in the lightning pace of social media today. Somewhere along the process, you have to stop. You have to ingest and ruminate on things. And I think that technology is kind of desensitizing us and devaluing the process of what serious contemplative thought and rumination on what some of these wise people from previous generations, there's from the presidential papers of Ronald Reagan all the way back to the speeches of Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Profound insights that you just can't get those
Yeah.
in a
Got to read.
in a tweet. You can't get those things in a Facebook post. You can't get those things by living saturated in the alternate reality of social media. It's not possible to
entertainments or anything for that matter.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing there again. The entertainment. I don't know if entertainment shapes society or the things that the society wants are reflected by entertainment. You know, there's arguments both ways that what we see produced in the entertainment industry is what people want to see, or is what they're producing shaping how we think about things.
I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of it might be sometimes they give the people what they want in entertainments, but a lot of times I think that the entertainment society says this is what we want you to think.
And this gets back to a place where we'll close for this for today, perhaps. There again, the value system that the Bible has. Some people say it's old, it's antiquated, it's anachronistic, it's a throwback to a different time, and only unthinking people believe that and read that. Well, no. Many of the scholars and philosophers of previous generations read that Bible also, and they believed that it had value that transcended societies, cultures, generations, ethnicities, racial. It was good for all races, ethnicities, all cultures, all societies in every age, whatever the economy was. Those values came through that book, and those values were good values that could be appropriated into any of those situations. And I think that there again, a good segue to close out with. We're talking about here LifeWorks Ministries. We're talking about what will make your life work better, and we believe that don't abandon those things. One of the greatest, the biggest bestseller of all time is the Bible. How many people in our society have actually taken down that book and ruminated on what it had to say?
Yeah.
And thought about the principles that it espouses, not just the do's and the don'ts, and the finding the scriptures you don't like, and so that you can be contentious and argumentative and disagree with those things. And we've all done that sometime or another to a certain degree, perhaps. But just take that book down and ruminate upon it, and let it just marinate into your mind, and think about the processes and the promises that it offers, and see how it's been used in the past and worked, because this is about LifeWorks Ministry.